3 years. That's how long Tavian, Alpha King of Valdros, had been slowly dying. Not from poison, not from battle, but from grief. The kind that hollowed you out until you were nothing but a walking corpse wearing a crown. His mate was dead. Marin, the woman who'd been his heartbeat, his sanity, his reason for breathing. Killed in a fire that had consumed the Eastern Tower while he'd been away settling a border dispute. They'd found bones, ashes. Her ring, melted and warped, recovered from the rubble. He'd buried what remained of her in the royal crypt and sealed his heart in there alongside her. For 3 years, Tavian ruled Valdros like winter itself. Cold, merciless, empty. His advisors whispered that he should remarry, produce an heir. He ignored them. How could he take another mate when the bond mark on his chest still burned with phantom pain every single night? And then, he saw her. She was carrying linens through the servants' corridor, head bowed, hair the color of dark honey falling across her face. Tavian stopped walking, stopped breathing, because that profile, that curve of jaw, that particular way she tucked her hair behind her ear. Impossible. It was impossible. You. The word tore from his throat before he could stop it. The servant startled, nearly dropping her bundle. She turned, lifted her gaze to his face, and Tavian felt his entire world crack open. Marin's eyes, Marin's face, Marin standing before him, alive, breathing, real. But when she looked at him, there was no recognition, no joy, no love, only the blank politeness of a servant addressing her king. "Your Majesty?" she said, and curtsied low. "Is something wrong?" He'd spent 3 years dying slowly without her. Now she stood before him, alive, and looking at him like he was a stranger. The great castle of Valdros had been built to intimidate. Black stone towers clawed at gray skies, and the corridors were designed to make visitors feel small, insignificant, aware at all times that they walked through the den of the most powerful alpha on the continent. But tonight, the castle's master stood frozen in a servant's hallway, unable to move, unable to think, staring at a ghost. "Your Majesty," the woman repeated, her voice uncertain. "Have I done something to offend?" Tavian couldn't speak. His wolf was howling inside him, clawing at his chest, screaming one word over and over: mate, mate, mate. But the bond that should have snapped back into place the moment their eyes met, felt wrong, muted, like trying to hear music through thick walls. "What is your name?" He barely recognized his own voice. It sounded scraped raw. The servant, Marin. It was Marin. How could she not know? Clutched her linens tighter. "Wren, Your Majesty. I work in the West Wing. The linens, the beds, Wren." The false name tasted like ash on his tongue. "How long have you worked in this castle?" 2 years, Your Majesty. Nearly 3, I think. 2 years. She'd been here for 2 years while he'd been dying of grief, sleeping under the same roof, walking the same halls, and he hadn't known. "Who hired you?" Tavian stepped closer, and she stepped back, fear flickering in her eyes. That fear cut him deeper than any blade. She'd never been afraid of him. Not once. Not even when they'd first met, and she'd been a minor noble's daughter with no idea she was destined to be queen. She'd looked him dead in the eye and told him his reputation for coldness was dramatically exaggerated. Now she trembled before him like a rabbit before a wolf. "The head housekeeper, Your Majesty," she whispered. "Mistress Orla. She gave me work when I arrived. Please, if I've done something wrong." "Where were you before you came here?" Confusion clouded her features. I don't remember, Your Majesty." Tavian went still. "What do you mean you don't remember?" "I was told I was found wandering near the southern road," she said, the words tumbling out nervously. "I had no memory of who I was or where I came from. No family came looking for me. Mistress Orla took pity on me and offered me a position. I've been here ever since. No memory. The words hit Tavian like a physical blow. His mate, his Marin, had been alive this entire time, but someone had stolen her memories, stolen him from her mind. "Look at me," he commanded. She raised her eyes reluctantly, and Tavian searched her face for any sign of recognition. Any flicker of the woman who used to laugh at his terrible jokes, who used to trace the bond mark on his chest and tell him she could feel his heartbeat even when they were apart. Nothing. There was nothing. "You truly don't know who I am," he said quietly, "beyond my title." "You are the king, Your Majesty." She sounded confused by the question. "Everyone knows who you are, but you don't know me." "I know, Your Majesty. I don't believe we've ever spoken before." Tavian closed his eyes, fighting to control the storm raging inside him. His wolf wanted to grab her, hold her, and mark her again until she remembered. But that wasn't how this worked. Whoever had done this, whoever had tried to kill her and failed, then stolen her memories instead, they'd done something to the bond itself. He couldn't force her to remember. He couldn't force the bond to heal. But he could protect her. He could find out what had happened. And when he discovered who had taken her from him, he would tear them apart with his bare hands. "You will come with me," Tavian said, his voice leaving no room for argument. Fear flooded her scent. "Your Majesty, please. I don't understand. You're not in trouble." He softened his tone with effort. "But you will not be returning to the servants' quarters. Not tonight. Not ever again." "But why?" Her voice cracked. "I'm no one. I'm just a servant." Tavian looked at her. This woman who had been his queen, his partner, his entire world, and felt his dead heart shudder back to life. "You are not no one," he said quietly, "and I intend to prove it." He turned and walked toward the royal wing, not checking to see if she followed. She did. She had no choice. But as Tavian walked, his mind was already racing. Marin had supposedly died in a fire 3 years ago. Her body, or what they'd believed was her body, had been burned beyond recognition, but she was alive, which meant someone had staged her death. Someone had wanted her gone badly enough to kill her, and when that failed, they'd erased her mind and hidden her in plain sight. Someone in this castle. The chambers Tavian brought her to were grander than anything she'd ever seen. At least, anything she could remember seeing. Wren, that was her name, the only name she knew, stood in the center of the room and tried not to panic. Silk curtains framed tall windows. A fire crackled in a hearth large enough to roast a boar. The bed was canopied in deep blue velvet, big enough for 6 people. This was a queen's chamber. She could feel it in the weight of the silence, the quality of the dust-free air. "I don't understand," she said for the 10th time. "Your Majesty, there must be some mistake." The Alpha King stood by the window, his back to her, his massive frame silhouetted against the gray evening light. He hadn't spoken since they'd arrived. Just stood there, perfectly still, radiating a tension that made her wolf cower. Not that her wolf was particularly brave. It never had been. Or at least, not as far as she could remember. "There's no mistake," he said finally. His voice was low, controlled, but she could hear something raw underneath it. Pain, maybe, or rage. "But I'm a servant. I fold linens. I scrub floors. I don't belong in... You belong exactly here." He turned to face her, and Wren's breath caught. She'd seen the king from a distance before. Everyone in the castle had. He was impossible to miss. Tall, powerfully built, with black hair that fell past his collar and eyes the color of a winter storm. Handsome in a severe, intimidating way. But up close, she could see what distance had hidden. the shadows beneath his eyes, the hollowness in his cheeks, the way he looked at her like she was something precious and devastating all at once. "Your Majesty," she tried again. "I don't know what you think I am, but—" "Tell me everything you remember," he interrupted. "From the moment you woke with no memory. Every detail." Ren swallowed hard. "I told you. I was found on the southern road. I don't know how I got there. I didn't know my name, my family, where I'd come from. A merchant's caravan picked me up. They brought me to the nearest town, and eventually, I made my way here." "Why here?" "I don't know." The confession felt heavy. "I just felt pulled, like something was calling me north. I thought I was going mad, but I couldn't ignore it. And when I reached Valdros, when I saw the castle, I felt—" She trailed off, embarrassed. "Felt what?" His voice was sharp. "Like I was supposed to be here," she whispered. "Like I'd finally come home. Which is ridiculous. I'd never been here before. I'm sure of it." Something flickered across his face. Something that looked almost like anguish. "You felt the bond," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "The what?" He didn't answer. Instead, he crossed to a writing desk and rang a small bell. Within moments, a knock came at the door. "Enter," Tavian commanded. An older woman stepped inside, gray-haired, sharp-eyed, dressed in the severe black of an upper servant. Ren recognized her immediately. "Mistress Orla," she breathed. The head housekeeper's eyes widened when she saw Ren. "Your Majesty, what is the meaning of this? Has this girl done something?" "This girl," Tavian said quietly, "will be staying in these chambers from now on. You will assign her personal attendants, maids of noble birth only. A healer will examine her tonight. And until I say otherwise, she does not leave the royal wing." Orla's mouth opened and closed. "Your Majesty, I don't understand. She's a linen maid. She has no family, no history. I know exactly who she is." Tavian's voice dropped to something dangerous. "The question I have for you, Orla, is how she came to be working in my castle for 2 years without anyone recognizing her." The housekeeper went pale. "Recognizing her? Your Majesty, recognizing her as what?" Tavian stepped closer to Orla, his presence suddenly suffocating. "As my wife, my queen, my mate." Silence crashed through the room. Ren couldn't breathe. The words didn't make sense. They couldn't possibly make sense. "That's impossible," she heard herself say. "The queen is dead. Everyone knows that. There was a fire. She is standing in front of me." Tavian's eyes never left Orla's face. "Alive, with no memory of who she is. And I want to know how that happened." Orla looked like she might faint. "Your Majesty, I swear to you, I didn't know. She looked familiar when she first came seeking work. Yes, but her face, the scar, the changed hair. I thought it was merely a resemblance. The queen was dead. We all mourned her. I never imagined—" "A scar?" Tavian's attention snapped to Ren. "What scar?" Ren's hand went instinctively to her left shoulder, where a raised ridge of damaged skin ran from her collarbone to her back. "From the fire," she said quietly. "That's what the healers told me when I was found. Burn scars. They said I was lucky to survive." Tavian's jaw tightened so hard she could see the muscle jumping. "Leave us," he told Orla. "Send the healer. Speak of this to no one. If word spreads before I'm ready, I will hold you personally responsible." Orla bowed deeply and fled. The door closed, and Ren was alone with the man who claimed she was his dead wife. "This can't be true," she said, her voice trembling. "I would remember. If I were a queen, if I had a mate, I would remember something." Tavian turned to face her, and for the first time she saw the full weight of grief in his eyes. 3 years of it. An ocean of loss that had turned a powerful king into a hollow shell. You don't remember, he said quietly, because someone made sure you wouldn't. Who would do that? Why? That's what I intend to find out. He took a step toward her, then stopped himself, as if afraid to get too close. But I need you to trust me. I know that's difficult when you don't know who I am, when you don't know who you are. You're asking me to believe I was a queen. Your queen. I'm asking you to believe that you were loved. His voice broke slightly on the word. More than anything in this world, and that whoever tried to take you from me will pay for what they've done. Ren stared at this broken king, this stranger who looked at her like she was his salvation and his destruction all at once. She should be terrified. She should demand to leave, to go back to her simple life folding linens. But something deep inside her, something buried beneath the fog where her memories should be, whispered that he was telling the truth. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now, Tavian said, we find out what really happened the night you died, and who wanted you dead badly enough to erase you from existence. The healer arrived within the hour. An elderly woman named Brigid, with silver hair braided down her back and eyes that seemed to see more than what was visible. She examined Ren thoroughly while Tavian stood by the window, his back turned to give them privacy, but his body rigid with tension. Well? He demanded when Brigid finally stepped back. The old healer's expression was grim. It's her, Your Majesty. There's no question. The bone structure, the birthmark behind her ear, the way her wolf responds to examination. This is Queen Marin. Marin, she was supposed to be Marin, sat on the edge of the bed, feeling disconnected from her own body. And her memory? Tavian pressed. Brigid hesitated. There's magic involved. Powerful magic. Someone didn't just cause trauma-induced amnesia. They deliberately severed her connection to her past, to her identity. The healer's voice dropped. To her mate bond. Tavian spun around. That's not possible. The mate bond can't be severed. It's sacred. It hasn't been severed completely, Brigid said carefully. That's why she felt pulled here. That's why she found her way back to you even without knowing who you were. The bond is muted, suppressed, like a fire buried under ash. The embers are still alive, but they've been smothered. Ren touched her chest instinctively. She'd always felt something there. An ache. An emptiness that no amount of work or distraction could fill. She'd assumed it was just the weight of not knowing who she was. But maybe it was this. The bond. Calling out to someone she couldn't remember. Can it be restored? Tavian's voice was rough with desperate hope. Can she remember? Brigid chose her words carefully. Magic this powerful doesn't fade on its own. It would require an equally powerful counterspell, or, she glanced at Ren, or the bond might heal itself naturally if given time and proximity. The mate bond wants to be whole. It will fight to repair itself. How long? Weeks, months, perhaps years. I can't say for certain. Tavian turned away, his hands clenched at his sides. The silence stretched, heavy and painful. There's something else, Your Majesty, Brigid said quietly. Something you need to know. What? The magic used on her. It's not common. It's not something any ordinary witch could accomplish. Brigid's voice dropped to nearly a whisper. This level of memory manipulation requires blood magic, dark magic, and it requires the caster to have access to something deeply personal from the victim, such as hair, blood, a treasured possession. Brigid paused. This wasn't done by a stranger, Your Majesty. Whoever erased her memory knew her well, had access to her private belongings. The implication hung in the air like poison. Someone close to Marin, close to the Queen, had orchestrated her disappearance. Someone who'd had access to her chambers, her personal effects. Someone within the castle walls. Who knew she would be in the Eastern Tower that night? Tavian asked, his voice deadly quiet. Bridget shook her head. That's beyond my knowledge, Your Majesty. I do, Wren said suddenly. Both of them turned to stare at her. I don't remember being there, she said quickly. I don't remember any of it. But just now, when you mentioned the Eastern Tower, she pressed a hand to her temple. Something flickered, like a fragment of a dream. Someone asking me to meet them there. Someone I trusted. Who? Tavian crossed to her in 2 strides, dropping to his knees before her so their eyes were level. Marin, think. Who asked you to be there? I don't know. Tears of frustration burned her eyes. It's like trying to grab smoke. The harder I reach for it, the more it slips away. Tavian's hands hovered near hers, wanting to touch her, not daring to. Up close, she could see the anguish carved into every line of his face. This man had loved his queen. Loved her, if Bridget was right. And he'd spent 3 years believing she was dead. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm trying to remember. I want to remember. Don't apologize. His voice cracked. This isn't your fault. None of this is your fault. Your Majesty, Bridget interrupted gently. There's one more thing. The bond suppression. It may be causing her physical effects as well. Fatigue, weakness, a sense of being incomplete. I've always felt that, Wren admitted. I thought it was just me. It's not you, Tavian said fiercely. It's what was done to you. He rose to his feet, and when he turned to Bridget, the grief in his expression had hardened into cold determination. No one outside this room learns of her identity, he commanded. Not yet. Whoever did this believes they succeeded. They think she's dead or gone forever. If they learn she's been found, they may try to finish what they started. You want to use her as bait? Bridget asked, horrified. I want to protect her, Tavian corrected sharply. But I also want to draw out the traitor who took her from me. They're still in this castle. I can feel it. Wren stood, her legs unsteady. So I'm to stay hidden? Pretend to be someone else? Tavian turned to her, and something in his gaze softened. You'll stay in the royal wing, under my protection. You won't be a servant. You'll be a guest, a distant relative of a foreign ally, recovering from illness. It explains your presence, your isolation, and your proximity to me. And if my memory returns, if I remember who did this, then we will have justice. The word carried the weight of a death sentence. But until then, you stay close to me. You trust no one outside this room. And you tell me immediately if you remember anything else. Even fragments. Even dreams. Wren nodded slowly. This was madness. All of it. Yesterday, she'd been folding linens. Tonight, she was supposedly a dead queen, victim of dark magic, hidden in royal chambers while a traitor lurked somewhere in the castle. But that ache in her chest, that muted, smothered thing she'd carried for as long as she could remember, it stirred when she looked at Tavian. Not recognition, not yet, but something. A warmth beneath the ash. Maybe Bridget was right. Maybe the bond wanted to heal, or maybe someone would kill her before she ever got the chance to remember. One more thing, she said quietly. Tavian paused at the door, turning back. If I was your wife, if I was queen, then the night of the fire, she swallowed. Where were you? Pain lanced across his features. I was 2 days' ride away, a border dispute that demanded my personal attention. By the time I received word of the fire, it was too late. By the time I returned, his voice fractured. There was nothing left but ashes. Someone sent you away, Wren realized. On purpose. So you wouldn't be here. Yes. The single word was laden with 3 years of guilt. And I've spent every moment since wishing I had died in that fire instead. He left before she could respond. Ren stood alone in the queen's chambers, her chambers, apparently, and stared at the door. Somewhere in this castle, a traitor breathed easy, believing their crime had gone undetected. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 3 days passed in a blur of confusion and careful observation. Ren, she still couldn't bring herself to think of herself as Marin, was given everything a noblewoman could want. Fine dresses replaced her servants' clothes. Rich food replaced thin soup and stale bread. Soft hands of noble-born attendants replaced calluses and scrubbing brushes. But she felt like a fraud wearing someone else's life. The 2 young women assigned to attend her were polite, but distant. Lady Senna, a willowy blonde with watchful eyes, and Lady Coralie, a redhead who smiled too brightly and asked too many questions. "You must tell us about your homeland," Coralie pressed on the 3rd morning. "The king said you're from across the eastern sea, but he gave us no details. Is it true the wolves there have white fur?" "I'm afraid my memories of home are hazy," Ren said carefully. "The illness, it affected my mind." "How tragic," Senna murmured, though her eyes remained sharp. "To lose one's memories, it must be like losing yourself entirely." Ren forced a smile. "Something like that." A knock interrupted them. The door opened to reveal a broad-shouldered man with dark skin and close-cropped hair, his bearing unmistakably military. "His Majesty requests your presence," the man said. His voice was deep, his gaze assessing. "Alone." Coralie and Senna exchanged glances but said nothing as Ren rose and followed the man into the corridor. "I'm Brannock," he said once they were out of earshot. "The king's second, his beta." "He told you about me?" Ren realized. "He told me everything." Brannock's expression was unreadable. "I was there the night we thought you died. I helped carry what we believed were your remains to the crypt." The words sent a chill through her. "I'm sorry. That must have been... I'm not looking for sympathy." His voice softened slightly. "I'm looking at a miracle. For 3 years, I've watched my king destroy himself with grief. And now you're here." He stopped walking and turned to face her fully. "I don't know if you'll ever remember who you were, but I know who Tavian was before he lost you. Warm. Hopeful. Alive." His jaw tightened. "If there's any chance of bringing that man back, I'll do whatever it takes to protect you." Before Ren could respond, they'd reached a heavy oak door. Brannock knocked twice, then pushed it open. The room beyond was a private study, smaller than she'd expected. Maps covered one wall, books lined another, and standing before a window, his massive frame blocking most of the gray light, was Tavian. He turned when she entered, and Ren's breath caught. He looked different today, less haunted somehow, as if having her nearby, even without her memories, had eased something in him. "Leave us," Tavian told Brannock. The beta nodded and withdrew, closing the door behind him. Silence stretched between them. Tavian studied her face with an intensity that made her skin warm. "You look well," he said finally. "The color is returning to your cheeks." "The food helps. I don't think I was eating properly before." "You weren't." A flicker of anger crossed his features. A queen reduced to servants' rations, sleeping in a cramped room with 6 other women. "If I'd known..." "You didn't. That's not your fault." "Everything about this is my fault." He turned away, staring out the window. "I should have been here the night of the fire. I should have sensed something was wrong. The mate bond should have told me." "Brigid said the bond was suppressed," Ren reminded him gently. "Whoever did this, they planned for everything. They made sure you wouldn't feel it when they tried to kill me." His hands clenched at his sides. "That doesn't absolve me?" Ren approached him slowly, the way one might approach a wounded animal. Up close, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the rigid set of his spine. This man carried guilt like armor. It was crushing him. "Tavian," she said softly, He went very still. It was the first time she'd used his name without his title. I may not remember being your wife, she continued. I may not remember loving you. But I can see what losing me did to you. And I know that whoever orchestrated this, they wanted exactly that. They wanted you broken. He turned, and they were suddenly very close, close enough that she could see the storm in his gray eyes, the barely leashed emotion beneath his control. I am broken, he said quietly. I have been since the moment I returned to find ashes where you should have been. Then let me help you find the truth. She held his gaze. Let me help you find who did this, not just for justice, but because I want to know who I was, who we were. Something shifted in his expression. The cold king she'd first met was cracking, revealing something raw underneath. Something human. You were everything, he said, his voice rough. You were stubborn and brilliant, and you argued with me constantly. You made me laugh when I'd forgotten how. You made me believe I could be more than just a weapon. His hand rose, hovering near her cheek, not quite touching. You were the only person who ever looked at me and saw a man instead of a monster. Ren's heart hammered against her ribs. The ache in her chest, that muted, buried thing, stirred violently. I want to remember that, she whispered. I want to remember you. His fingers finally made contact, brushing her cheek with heartbreaking gentleness. His touch was warm, grounding, and something inside her reached toward him. For a moment, just a moment, she felt it. A flicker of something vast and overwhelming, like glimpsing the ocean through a crack in a wall. Then it faded, and she was left gasping. What was that? She breathed. The bond, Tavian said, wonder in his voice. It's still there, buried, but alive. Before either could speak again, a knock shattered the moment. Your Majesty, Brannock's voice came through the door, urgent. You're needed in the Great Hall. The Lady Carith has returned from her family's estate. She's requesting an audience. Tavian's expression shuddered instantly. Carith? Who is she? Ren asked. He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was flat. She was your closest friend, your lady-in-waiting. She was one of the last people to see you alive the night of the fire. The Great Hall of Valdros was designed to intimidate. Vaulted ceilings soared overhead, supported by pillars carved with snarling wolves. The king's throne sat on a raised dais, black stone and sharp angles, looking less like a seat and more like a weapon. Ren watched from a hidden alcove as Tavian received his court. He had insisted she observe, but remain unseen. If Carith is involved, he'd said, I don't want her knowing you exist. Not yet. So Ren watched through a gap in the curtains as a woman glided into the hall. Lady Carith was beautiful. Raven black hair cascaded down her back in elaborate waves. Her gown was the deep red of old blood, fitted to emphasize a figure that drew every male eye in the room. She moved with the confidence of someone who knew exactly how stunning she was. But it was her face that made Ren's breath catch. Something about those features, the sharp cheekbones, the full lips curved in a practiced smile, triggered a violent reaction in her chest. Not recognition exactly. Something darker. Something that felt like warning. Your Majesty, Carith purred, sinking into an elegant curtsy. It's been too long. 6 months, Tavian said, his voice neutral. You extended your stay at your family's estate. Grief takes time to process. Carith rose gracefully. Losing Marin was devastating for me. She was my dearest friend. Surely you understand. I understand grief. Of course you do. Carith's eyes swept over him with barely concealed hunger. We both lost someone precious that night. Perhaps we can comfort each other now that I've returned. From the alcove, Ren felt her wolf bristle with sudden, unexpected fury. The intensity of it startled her. She had no memories of this woman, no reason to react so strongly, but her instinct screamed that Kareth was dangerous. I require no comfort, Tavian said coolly, but you're welcome to return to your duties in the castle. We can discuss your responsibilities tomorrow. So formal. Kareth laughed lightly, but Ren caught the flash of irritation in her eyes. You used to be warmer with me, Your Majesty, before the fire, before you closed yourself off from everyone who cared about you. The fire changed many things. It doesn't have to. She stepped closer to the throne, bold in a way that made Ren's skin crawl. Marin is gone, Tavian. She's been gone for 3 years. Surely it's time to move forward, to consider the kingdom's future, your future. My future is my own concern. Is it? Kareth tilted her head. The council presses you to remarry, to produce an heir. The kingdom needs stability. Her voice dropped, intimate and inviting. I could provide that stability. I knew Marin better than anyone. I know what she would have wanted for you. Ren's hands clenched so hard her nails bit into her palms. The audacity of this woman, offering herself as a replacement, speaking of what Marin would have wanted. And then, like a door cracking open, a memory surfaced. Kareth's face, younger but unmistakable, laughing as she brushed Marin's hair. You're so lucky, she was saying, the most powerful alpha in the realm, and he looks at you like you hung the moon. What I wouldn't give... The memory fragmented, slipping away before Ren could grasp it fully. But it was enough. Kareth had been close to her. Close enough to touch her hair, her belongings, her personal effects. Close enough to obtain what was needed for blood magic. Close enough to betray her. In the great hall, Tavian rose from his throne. This audience is concluded, he said flatly. We'll speak tomorrow about your duties, nothing more. Kareth's smile didn't waver, but something cold flickered behind her eyes. Of course, Your Majesty. Tomorrow. She curtsied again and withdrew, her red gown trailing behind her like a bloodstain. Ren stayed hidden until the hall emptied, then slipped out to find Tavian waiting in the corridor. You saw, he said. I remembered. The words tumbled out. Just a fragment. She was brushing my hair. She said she envied what we had. What I had with you. Tavian's expression darkened. Kareth always wanted what wasn't hers. I suspected, even before the fire. The way she looked at me when Marin wasn't watching. The way she positioned herself always nearby, always available. His voice hardened. I ignored it because Marin trusted her. Because I didn't think she'd actually... She had access to me, Ren said. To my chambers. My belongings. If anyone could have obtained what was needed for blood magic, it was her. It's not enough proof. Not yet. Then we find more. Tavian studied her face, and something warm flickered in his winter-gray eyes. You're already thinking like a queen. I'm thinking like someone who wants answers. She hesitated, then added, and like someone who doesn't want to see that woman anywhere near you. His eyebrows rose. Jealousy? I don't know what to call it. Heat crept up her neck. I have no memories of being your wife. But when she looked at you like that, like you were something she deserved to have, she shook her head. It made me want to tear her throat out. Tavian's lips curved into the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. It transformed his face, making him look younger, lighter, almost boyish. That's my Marin, he said softly. Even without your memories, your wolf knows what's hers. The words sent warmth flooding through her. She shouldn't feel possessive of a man she didn't remember marrying, but she did. God's help her, she did. What do we do now? She asked. We watch. We wait. And we let Kareth believe she succeeded. His smile faded into something harder. She's arrogant. She'll make a mistake. And when she does, I'll be waiting. 2 weeks passed in a delicate dance of secrets and suspicion. Ren remained hidden in the royal wing, officially a foreign guest recovering from illness. Tavian visited her chambers every evening, sometimes for hours, telling her stories of their past together. "You once threw a goblet of wine at a visiting duke," he said one night, amusement warming his voice. He'd made a comment about omega wolves being better suited to bedrooms than council chambers. You told him his bloodline had clearly prioritized inbreeding over intelligence. Did he challenge me? He tried. I told him if he wanted to duel my queen, he'd have to go through me first. Tavian smiled at the memory. He withdrew his complaint and left Valdros the next morning. More memories surfaced as the days passed, fragments at first, then longer sequences. She remembered dancing with Tavian at their wedding, his hands steady on her waist, his eyes never leaving her face. She remembered arguing with him over tax policy and being surprised when he conceded she was right. She remembered the feeling of his lips on her neck, his teeth grazing her mark. That particular memory made her gasp awake in the middle of the night, her body flushed with heat, the phantom sensation of his touch still lingering on her skin. The bond was healing. She could feel it growing stronger each day, like a plant reaching towards sunlight after years in darkness. And then came the night that changed everything. It started with another memory, the clearest one yet. She was in the Eastern Tower, waiting. The note had said to come alone, that there was something urgent, something that couldn't wait. And she'd trusted the handwriting because she'd seen it 1,000 times before, Kareth's handwriting. The door opened and Kareth stepped inside. But she wasn't alone. A figure followed her, hooded, face hidden in shadow. "I'm sorry," Kareth said. But she didn't look sorry. She looked triumphant. "You have something I want, something you never deserved." The hooded figure raised their hands, and purple light blazed. Ren sat up in bed, gasping, drenched in cold sweat. She knew. She finally knew. Kareth had lured her to the tower. Kareth had brought the Blood Witch. Kareth had orchestrated everything. Ren threw off her blankets and ran. Tavian's chambers were at the end of the royal corridor. She didn't bother knocking, just burst through the door, not caring about propriety, not caring about anything except sharing what she'd finally remembered. "Tavian, I remember who—" She stopped. Tavian stood in the center of his chamber, perfectly still. And beside him, far too close, her hand resting on his chest, was Kareth. "Oh," Kareth said, her smile spreading like poison. "What have we here?" Ren's blood turned to ice. "Marin." Tavian's voice was strained, wrong. His eyes were fixed on her, but something was off about his posture, too rigid, too frozen. "Run." "He can't help you," Kareth said conversationally. "He's paralyzed. A little gift from a friend. The same friend who erased your memories 3 years ago." She stepped away from Tavian, approaching Ren with languid grace. "I knew you were here. Did you really think you could hide from me? I was your closest friend. I know your scent better than anyone." "Why?" Ren's voice came out steady despite the terror clawing at her throat. "Why would you do this? I trusted you." "Yes, you did. That was always your problem. Trusting too easily." Kareth's beautiful face twisted with 3 years of buried resentment. "Do you have any idea what it was like, watching you have everything I deserved? You weren't even supposed to be queen. You were a minor noble's daughter. Pretty, but unremarkable. And yet, he chose you. He chose you. So you tried to kill me. I tried to replace you." Kareth's eyes blazed. The original plan was simple. Remove you, comfort the grieving king, become his new queen. But the Blood Witch I hired was incompetent. She was supposed to kill you cleanly. Instead, she panicked, set the fire, and when I found out you'd survived with your memories gone, She laughed bitterly. I should have finished the job myself. But I thought, why bother? You were nobody. A broken servant. No threat. You were wrong. Clearly. Kareth produced a small vial from her sleeve, filled with shimmering violet liquid. But I won't make the same mistake twice. She moved faster than Ren expected, grabbing her arm, trying to force the vial to her lips. Ren fought back. 3 years of hard labor had made her body strong, even if she hadn't realized it. She twisted, broke Kareth's grip, and the vial went flying, shattering against the stone floor. Kareth snarled with fury. And then Tavian was there. Whatever paralysis had held him had broken. He seized Kareth by the throat and lifted her off the ground as if she weighed nothing. You took everything from me, he said, his voice barely recognizable. You stole my mate. You let me believe she was dead. You watched me suffer for 3 years and offered yourself as comfort. Kareth's face was turning purple, her hands clawing uselessly at his grip. Tavian, Ren said. Don't kill her. His eyes snapped to her, wild with rage. Not yet, she continued. She mentioned a blood witch. Someone who's still alive. Still out there. We need to know who. We need to know how to fully break the spell. For a long moment she thought he wouldn't listen. The beast in him wanted blood. She could see it in his eyes, feel it pulsing through the bond. But then his grip loosened. Kareth crumpled to the floor, gasping. Guards! Tavian called, his voice echoing through the corridor. Within moments, armored men flooded the chamber. They took Kareth away, her screams of protest fading as they dragged her toward the dungeons. And then, Ren was in Tavian's arms. He held her so tightly she could barely breathe, his face buried in her hair, his whole body shaking. I couldn't move, he said raggedly. She had me paralyzed and I couldn't move. I thought I was going to watch her kill you all over again. She didn't. Ren pulled back to look at him. I'm here. I'm alive. And I remember. His eyes searched her face. How much? The night of the fire. Kareth luring me to the tower. A hooded witch. She swallowed. I remember being terrified. I remember calling out for you through the bond, and I remember... Her voice broke. I remember loving you. I remember what we had. Tavian's composure cracked entirely. Tears slipped down his cheeks. This powerful king, this hardened warrior, weeping in front of her. Say it again, he whispered. Tell me you remember. Ren cupped his face in her hands, just as she'd done 1,000 times in the life she was finally reclaiming. I remember everything, she said. I remember you. I remember us. And I remember that I am your mate, your queen, and I'm never leaving you again. Tavian kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was desperate and fierce, and tasted of tears and relief, and 3 years of grief finally releasing. The bond roared back to life between them, fully, completely, overwhelming in its intensity. She felt him in her chest, her blood, and her bones. She felt his joy and his anguish and his love, so much love it nearly broke her. When they finally pulled apart, both gasping, foreheads pressed together, the world had changed. But Kareth's final words echoed in Marin's mind. A blood witch. Someone still out there. The traitor had been caught. But the architect of her suffering was still free. And until that witch was found, none of them were truly safe. The dungeons beneath Valdros had been carved from the same black stone as the castle itself. Cold seeped from the walls. Shadows pooled in corners where torchlight couldn't reach. And in the deepest cell, bound in silver chains that burned against her skin, Kareth waited. Marin stood outside the cell, watching through the bars. It felt strange to be on this side of a cage, looking at a woman who had once braided her hair and whispered secrets in her ear. You came, Kareth said. Even filthy and chained, she managed to sound superior. I wondered if you would. You have information I need. The Blood Witch. Kareth laughed, the sound echoing off stone. Of course, that's all anyone cares about now. Not my reasons. Not my suffering. Just the witch. Your suffering? Marin's voice sharpened. You stole 3 years of my life. You nearly killed me. You let my mate believe I was dead. And do you know what I suffered? Kareth lunged against her chains, eyes blazing. Watching you have everything I deserved. Watching him look at you like you were the sun itself while I stood in your shadow, invisible and worthless. So you decided to destroy me. I decided to take what should have been mine. Marin studied the woman she'd once called friend. There was no remorse in Kareth's face. No guilt. Just bitter, consuming envy that had curdled into something monstrous. The Blood Witch, Marin said flatly. Give me a name, and I'll speak to Tavian about mercy. Mercy. Kareth spat the word. He'll execute me regardless. I saw it in his eyes. The only reason I'm still breathing is because you stopped him. Then give me a name because it's the right thing to do. Because somewhere, beneath all this hatred, there's still a woman who was once my friend. A shadow passed across Kareth's expression. Pain, maybe. Or the ghost of who she'd been before jealousy consumed her. Her name is Ylvain, Kareth said quietly. She's not from Valdros. My mother found her, hired her from the Eastern Territories where blood magic is still practiced in secret. Where is she now? Kareth's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Closer than you think. My mother isn't foolish enough to let loose ends remain untied. Ylvain has been in the castle since word reached us that the king had discovered you. Watching. Waiting. Marin's blood chilled. She's here? Now? Did you really think your memories were returning naturally? Kareth laughed again, but it was hollow. Ylvain has been monitoring the suppression spell. Every time you remembered too much, she reinforced it. But with me captured, she'll know the game is ending. She'll either run or finish what she started. Finish? Kill you. Kareth's voice was matter of fact. The spell has a failsafe. If the caster activates it, your mind doesn't just forget. It breaks. Permanently. You'll be alive, but there'll be nothing left inside. Just an empty shell. Horror flooded through Marin. Who is she posing as? Where in the castle? For a long moment, Kareth said nothing. Then quietly. She's one of your attendants. The blonde one. Senna. The world tilted. Lady Senna. The quiet, watchful woman who had dressed her every morning. Who had brought her meals? Who had been alone with her dozens of times over the past weeks? Marin didn't wait to hear more. She turned and ran. She found Tavian in his war room, Brannick at his side, both men hunched over maps and reports. Senna, she gasped out. It's Senna. She's the Blood Witch. Tavian was moving before she finished speaking. Brannick, seal the castle. No one leaves. Find Lady Senna and bring her to me alive. Brannick nodded and sprinted out. How do you know? Tavian asked, crossing to her. Kareth told me. The witch has been here the whole time, monitoring the spell on my memories. And there's a failsafe. If she activates it, she won't. His hands gripped her shoulders, steadying her. We'll find her first. Tavian, you don't understand. She's been alone with me. She could have activated the failsafe at any time. Why hasn't she? His jaw tightened. Because she didn't know you were the queen. You were just a servant to her. Another victim she'd already dealt with. She had no reason to act until now. Marin finished the thought. Until Kareth was captured and she realized her identity would be exposed. They stared at each other, the same terrible understanding dawning. Senna wouldn't run. She couldn't afford to leave witnesses. She would activate the failsafe, destroy Marin's mind, and try to escape in the chaos. Which meant they had almost no time. The bond, Marin said suddenly. Brigid said the mate bond fights to repair itself. that it's stronger than any magic. What if, what if we complete it fully? Tavian caught her meaning. The physical claiming. The mark. If the bond is whole, it might be strong enough to shield you from the failsafe. Is that possible? I don't know. His voice was ragged. But I'm not losing you again. Not to Kareth. Not to some blood witch. Not to anything. He pulled her close and Marin buried her face against his chest, breathing in his scent. Pine and winter wind and home. The bond thrummed between them, stronger than it had ever been, reaching for completion. Whatever happens, she whispered, I need you to know, I love you. I loved you before my memories returned. I loved you when you were just a cold king who looked at me like I was a miracle. And I love you now, knowing everything we've been through. Tavian's arms tightened around her. I have loved you since the moment I saw you, he said roughly, and I will love you until the stars burn out. Nothing, nothing will take you from me again. He tilted her chin up and kissed her deeply. And this time, when their lips met, Marin felt the bond surge. It was like lightning striking, like a door being thrown open. She felt everything, his love, his grief, his desperate hope, and she poured herself back into him. 3 years of separation burned away in an instant. The mark on her shoulder, faded and scarred from the fire, blazed with sudden heat. And somewhere in the castle, a woman screamed. They found Ylvain in the servants' corridor, collapsed against a wall, clutching her head. The magical backlash had hit her the moment the bond completed. Whatever connection she'd maintained to Marin's mind had been severed violently, like a rope snapping under too much tension. Brannick and 4 guards surrounded her, weapons drawn. Don't move, Brannick commanded. But Ylvain was already rising, and she was no longer the quiet, watchful attendant. Her eyes blazed with purple light, her lips pulled back in a snarl, and power crackled around her hands. You think your little bond can stop me? She hissed. I've broken stronger spells than your pathetic mating magic. She hurled a bolt of violet energy at the guards. 2 went down, screaming. The others scattered. Tavian shifted in an instant, his massive wolf form exploding forward, jaws aimed at Ylvain's throat. But she was ready. A shield of purple light deflected him, sending him crashing into the wall. Tavian! Marin screamed. He struggled to rise, but the magical impact had stunned him. Blood matted the fur at his temple. Ylvain advanced on Marin, power gathering in her palms. 3 years I've been cleaning up Kareth's mess, she spat. 3 years of maintaining that spell, watching you stumble around like a lost child, waiting for the day someone would recognize you and ruin everything. Why? Marin demanded, backing away. What did I ever do to you? You? Ylvain laughed bitterly. Nothing. You were just a job. But Kareth's mother paid me a fortune to make you disappear, and I don't leave contracts unfulfilled. So it was just money. It's always money, power, survival. Ylvain raised her hands. And now, little queen, it ends. Purple light blazed. And Marin moved. She didn't think. Didn't plan. Her wolf took over, pushing her faster than she'd ever moved before. She ducked under the blast, rolled, and came up right in front of Ylvain. Her fist connected with the witch's jaw with a crack that echoed through the corridor. Ylvain staggered, shock breaking her concentration. The purple light flickered and died. You, she started. Marin didn't let her finish. 3 years of scrubbing floors and hauling linens had made her body strong. 3 years of survival had made her ruthless. And the fully restored bond with her mate had unlocked something fierce and primal inside her. She grabbed Ylvain by the throat and slammed her against the wall. You stole my memories, Marin snarled. You stole my life. You made my mate believe I was dead. And you think I'm going to let you walk away? Fear flickered in Ylvain's eyes. Real fear. You can't kill me. You need me to remove the spell completely. The spell is broken. Marin's grip tightened. The bond shattered it. I remember everything now, including the fact that you watched me work as a servant for 2 years and never once showed a shred of mercy. I was going to let you live, Ylvain gasped. You were nobody. You didn't matter. I matter now. Tavian's wolf appeared beside her, blood still dripping from his temple but his eyes clear. He shifted back to human form, naked and furious. Step aside, he said quietly. This is my right. Marin understood. As alpha, as king, as mate, he had the right to execute the woman who had tried to destroy them both. But she shook her head. No, this one is mine. She felt Tavian's surprise through the bond, then his fierce approval. Marin looked into Ylvain's terrified eyes. You're going to tell us everything. Every detail of the conspiracy. Everyone who was involved. And when you're finished, you're going to stand trial before the full court, where everyone will know exactly what you did. And then? Ylvain whispered. Marin smiled, cold and sharp. And then you'll discover what Valdros does to traitors. She released her grip, and Ylvain crumpled to the ground. Guards swarmed forward to bind her. Brannock, recovered from the magical blast, took charge of the prisoner. And Marin turned to find Tavian staring at her with something like awe. What? She asked. You. He reached for her, pulling her against his chest. You just faced down a blood witch with your bare hands. She hurt us. She hurt you. I wasn't going to let that stand. My queen. He pressed his forehead to hers. My fierce, magnificent queen. For a moment they just breathed together, the bond humming between them. The crisis wasn't over. There were still trials to hold, conspirators to root out, a kingdom to reassure. But they would face it together. As they always should have. The trials took 3 weeks. Kareth was sentenced to exile, stripped of her family name and lands, cast out of Valdros to wander the wastelands beyond the eastern border. Her mother, Lady Draven, was executed for treason, the architect of the entire conspiracy, motivated by ambition to see her daughter on the throne. Ylvain faced a different fate. Her knowledge of dark magic made her too dangerous to release, too valuable to kill. She was bound with silver and magic, imprisoned in the deepest dungeon where her powers could never touch anyone again. When the last verdict was delivered, Marin stood beside Tavian on the dais, no longer hidden, no longer pretending to be anyone but who she was. The court had reacted with shock when Tavian revealed her survival. Shock, then joy, then fierce celebration. Their lost queen had returned. The king's grief was over. But it was the quiet moments Marin treasured most. The morning after the final trial, she woke in Tavian's arms in the chambers they now shared. Sunlight streamed through the windows. Actual sunlight, warm and golden, breaking through the gray skies that had dominated Valdros for 3 years. It's as if the kingdom itself is healing, she murmured. Tavian stirred beside her, pulling her closer. It is. You are. He pressed a kiss to her hair. I'm still not entirely certain I'm not dreaming. You're not. She turned in his arms to face him. I'm here. I'm real. And I'm not going anywhere. Promise me. The vulnerability in his voice made her heart ache. This powerful king, this feared alpha, reduced to pleading for reassurance. I promise, she said softly. No more fires, no more disappearances, no more waking up alone. She traced the bond mark on his chest, feeling it pulse with warmth. You're stuck with me forever. He smiled, the real smile she remembered from before the fire, the one that transformed his harsh features into something beautiful. Forever sounds perfect. They lay together in comfortable silence, watching dust motes dance in the sunlight. Through the bond, Marin could feel Tavian's contentment, his peace. For the first time in 3 years, the weight of grief had lifted from his shoulders. "There's something I need to tell you," she said eventually. He went still. "What is it?" When Bridget examined me after the bond was restored, she noticed something. Marin took his hand and placed it on her stomach. Something I didn't expect. Tavian's breath caught. "Are you—" "It's early, only a few weeks." She smiled at the wonder dawning on his face. "But yes, you're going to be a father." For a long moment he didn't speak. Couldn't speak. Tears gathered in his winter-gray eyes and spilling down his cheeks. "A child," he whispered. "Our child. Our child." Marin felt tears prick her own eyes. An heir for Valdros, a symbol that the darkness is truly over. Tavian gathered her close, his body shaking with emotion. She held him as he wept, not tears of grief this time, but of overwhelming joy. "I thought I'd lost everything," he said raggedly. "I thought the rest of my life would be nothing but cold and duty and loneliness. And now? And now you have it all back. We have it all back." He pulled away to look at her, cupping her face in his hands. "You gave me back my heart, Marin. You gave me back my life. I don't know how to repay that." "Love me," she said simply. "Love our child. Be the king and father I know you can be. That's all I've ever wanted. Always." He kissed her softly, reverently, "For the rest of my days." That evening, Tavian made an announcement to the court. The queen was with child. The succession was secured. And in honor of their reunion, he was establishing a new law. Never again would a mate bond be desecrated by blood magic. Any witch who attempted such magic would face immediate execution. And resources would be devoted to helping any victims of such spells recover their memories and their lives. It wasn't enough to undo what had happened to Marin, but it was a start. A promise that no one else would suffer as they had. Marin stood beside her mate as the court cheered, her hand resting on her belly, the bond singing with joy between them. She thought of the woman she'd been just months ago. A nameless servant with no past, no memories, no hope. She thought of the ache she'd carried in her chest, that muted, buried thing she couldn't explain. The bond, fighting to bring her home. And it had. Against all odds, through fire and magic and 3 years of grief, it had brought her back to where she belonged. "You're smiling," Tavian murmured. "I'm happy." "So am I." He took her hand, raising it to his lips. "Happier than I ever thought I could be again." She leaned into him, breathing in his scent. Pine and winter wind and home. 3 years ago, she had died in a fire. Today, she had risen from the ashes. And as the sun set over Valdros, painting the gray stone towers in shades of gold and rose, Marin knew with absolute certainty that the darkness was finally behind them. Their story wasn't over. It was only beginning.